Carlos Ramirez, owner of NVS Audio in Roselle, New Jersey. I've been meaning to make this video for a while. It's just we've been extremely busy. So today was the final straw and I figured I had to do it today. I really need these other shop owners to do better. They don't realize that customers are doing research. So you're giving them these answers and you think you're getting over on them, but you're not. Customers are studying and doing their research before they come to you. You don't realize that they're actually interviewing you to see what you're going to say. So answers like, you don't need this, or you don't need all that, or you don't need a DSP, are not the answers that they want to hear. So we have 40 bikes between the two shops. The number of out-of-state bikes has gotten larger than the number of New Jersey bikes that we have in the shop. So we have more out-of-state bikes than we do local bikes in the shop. So customers are riding 400, 500, 600 miles to drop their bike off because they feel confident that the job's going to get done right the first time with us, or it's a wiring rescue or an install rescue or a tune because another shop has tried and couldn't make them happy. I'm pleading for all the shop owners to do a little bit better to be able to service your local clients, because we can't handle this volume. There's got to be a point where we don't want to turn away work, but if everybody did a little bit better at servicing their clients, there's plenty of work to go around. I just don't understand what kind of sales training some of these shops have, because when a client walks in and wants an option to do stuff better, the answer should not be, you don't need all of that. That would be like a client walking into the Harley dealership to buy a CVO, and you tell them you don't need all that. You don't need to go that fast. You don't need all that horsepower. You don't need all that torque. You don't need power locking saddlebags. I don't know. In sales, you're supposed to add value to the sale, pre-qualify your client, and offer the client the product that would give them the most value. Telling them that you don't need something that they're specifically asking for that they really do need is not a good job as a salesman. So I get it. You might not be comfortable, you might not feel comfortable with adding a DSP. You maybe haven't done it before, but learn, study, research. All the major manufacturers offer training. Buy one, put it on your bike, put it on the demo board of your sound room, play around with it. When customers are asking for upgrades, as a salesperson, you're supposed to give it to them. You're supposed to give them options and let them choose what's within their budget. But it's not fair to a client you telling them that they don't need something because you don't know how to use it. And then what's happening in most cases, I'm not trying to brag, I'm just doing real numbers. We're going through about 60 DSPs a month, because what's happening is the client will go to a local shop and inquire about a DSP, and they'll tell the client that he doesn't need one. The client will leave and immediately call me and order one, and I'll ship it to them. I build custom T-harnesses, I preload rough tunes. So the best way to tune a bike is with the bike in front of you with an RTA and an experienced tuner and a good ear. But a pre-tuned DSP with some basic parameters set up beats a bike that has no DSP at all. And it protects the speakers from blowing up. You can't tell me that running a Sony radio straight into an amplifier with no high pass filters is going to sound good and it's going to protect your speakers. So if the customer doesn't have the budget, then I get it, but you should still be offering solutions, because let's say their budget is $3,000 for an audio upgrade. Well, instead of skipping on the DSP, which will make their $300 speakers sound like $500 speakers. Why don't you scale them down on the speaker, or maybe do one set of speakers instead of two? You're skipping a very important part of the build process. And just because you don't know how to use it is not fair to the client. You should learn how to use it so you can offer a better value to your client. So it's you might not agree with me, but think about it. Why do I have so many bikes here? Obviously, people trust what I do and like the way the bikes sound that we build, or else we wouldn't be so busy. It's not like I have a sign standing in front of my shop saying, hey, bring your bike in, let me check your audio. People have gone to other shops and not been happy with the work, or people have just found value in what we say and just chosen to go with us the first time. So I'm pleading to shop owners to just do better, study, research, offer your customers better value. Not everybody's looking for a cheap price, because if all things are created equal, then obviously nobody wants to spend more money and get the same. But if you can offer a better product or a better service or a better experience, they will pay for that. If you're charging more and not delivering more, you're not going to get more money. That just doesn't make sense. But if you can do a better job and provide better service and provide better wiring and provide better tuning and provide more adjustability, like something I'll never understand is changing brands of speakers, trying to chase a certain type of sound instead of tailoring the speakers you have to try and give you the sound that you're looking for. In my book, that makes more sense. Most of the speakers in the same price point sound really similar. There is no magic speaker that costs $50 and sounds like a $500 speaker. There are some value speakers that perform, but for the most part, most motorcycle speakers are $300 a pair, and a lot of them are very, very similar in performance. It's just some have tweeters that are brighter than the other, some offer more mid-bass, but with the DSP and proper tuning, you can get them all to perform pretty well. Every speaker has a weakness, every speaker has a strength, and when you're just putting stuff together, you're at the mercy of it sounding however it's going to sound. It's like buying the most expensive parts for your motor and then not getting it tuned. Just because you bought the best, most expensive parts doesn't mean all these parts will work well together on their own. They have to be tuned. And a bike is the same way. It's just as important as mapping out your install, sitting down with your builder, not just randomly buying parts. I see people buying saddlebags with ports and then going out and picking a speaker. Aren't you supposed to pick the speaker first, or pick the speaker that works inside that saddlebag? There's a lot of math to this, and the math isn't really that hard if you have experience. Most shops will spend time to talk to you. Just make a phone call or stop by the shop, or most importantly, listen to a bike. I don't understand how clients are spending $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 with a shop that didn't give them something to listen to first, because there's a lot of awesome builders across the United States, and everybody has a different style and a different sound. So Dorian's bikes don't sound like Andy's bikes, and Carl's bikes don't sound like everybody's got a different sound, and they're all quality builds. It's just you got to go with whoever builds the bike that sounds the way you want your bike to sound. But I'll just keep the rant short. We just had a bike that came up from Alabama. He hung out for a couple of days so we could do his build. It's just something simple, but he wanted it done right the first time, and then he wanted the NVS audio tune. So he took a couple of days off of work to come hang out with us and check out the shop and go sightseeing in New York City and have us do the build for him. It's still humbling. I'm still not used to clients riding all the way across the country to come get some simple work done by us. I appreciate it. I appreciate every client. I appreciate every client I have. I appreciate their trust. But you other shop owners out there have to do better, so we can all provide a better service and provide better value to our clients. Like, telling a client you don't need all that when they actually do isn't fair. It's not good salesmanship. If I understand in getting them not to buy $1,000 set of speakers when a $500 set of speakers will work. I totally get that. But saying you don't need a powerful piece of equipment like a DSP, I don't understand. Telling them that a line leveler is just fine when they're running a 6-speaker setup with 8-inch mid-bass drivers, I don't understand. But you shop owners that are doing it, you're not getting away with it because they're just reaching out to other shops and ordering the pieces that they need and getting the tech support that they need. So you're missing out on a lot of local business because you don't want to better yourself and better your business and better your shop. So if you take heed, cool. If you need help, call me. I'll help you. I help shop owners all the time, every day. It's let's all do better. Let's all be better. Let's all make the experience better for a client. So I came up with a list. I call it my 5% list. So there's a lot of stuff that I feel is important, and we do it on every single bike. And I feel it makes the bike sound a little bit better, perform a little bit better, and the amplifiers don't get as hot. So it's my 5% list. So let's say that each one of these things, we'll call it a shortcut, or one of the things that you feel the client doesn't need and you don't do, cost the customer 5% of their overall sound. So we'll start with the factory radio on these newer Harleys. So we're doing really well with the GTS radios, and anybody that buys a 19, 20, or 21 that comes with the GTS radio that's all touchscreen with built-in CarPlay and Android Auto, they don't want to switch these radios. They don't want to give up on the fact that the radio is 100% waterproof and it has the features that they need built in. So it has a nasty EQ curve built in from the factory. So you need to flash the radio to give you a nice flat signal to start with before you feed signal to your amplifiers. So if you don't get the radio flashed, we'll say that costs you 5% of your total sound. It's a lot more than that. We'll keep the math simple and say 5%, because 5% is a small amount and it's insignificant. So you don't flash the radio. Then you don't add a DSP. So we'll call that 5%, even though we all know it's a lot more than 5%, but still, once again, insignificant. So another 5% loss of sound. Not using quality oxygen-free copper wiring. CCA aluminum wire offers 30 to 50% more resistance than oxygen-free copper wire. So that's a huge voltage drop across your amplifier. So there's no way your 1,000-watt amplifier can do 1,000 watts if you don't give it high-quality oxygen-free copper wire, but we'll call it a 5% loss. Not matching the impedance of your speakers. This is very important, especially when you're running speakers like Bema. Bema is one of the most popular speakers that we sell. It's one of the most expensive. It's one of the highest performing. But Bema is tricky because most of their drivers are 8 ohms. All the best mid-bass drivers on the market, most of them are 8 ohms. So let's say you're using a 2400.4 4-ohm and you run 2 of the Bema Power IX10s. The amplifier is only going to do half power because you have an 8-ohm load on each side when the amplifier is looking for a 4-ohm load on each side. So the 2400-watt amp is only going to give you 1,200 watts, assuming you've used the right size power ground. So by not matching the impedance and getting the right ohms, you left a lot of power on the table, so we'll call that 5%, even though it's a lot more than 5%. Not upgrading your battery. Power has become so cheap nowadays that you can buy a 3,000 watt RMS amplifier for less than $400. I've seen them as cheap as $200. Not from quality companies, but still the amplifier creates enough voltage to do 3,000 watts RMS. So now the problem is power has become cheap, and you can literally buy the amplifier cheaper than you can buy the proper wiring to run the amplifier. And then clients are buying 1, 2, 3 of these amplifiers, which draw in excess of 1, 2, 300 amps of current and hooking up to the stock battery. So it takes power to make power. If you don't upgrade the battery, how do you expect the amplifier to create the amount of power you want it to create? But we'll call not upgrading the battery 5%. Not upgrading the factory ground on the bike when you're adding aftermarket accessories. So the ground that goes to the frame on the bike is 8 gauge. There's a lot of people grounding to the frame, which is fine if you do an upgraded feed from the battery to the frame. Here we do a 0 gauge feed from the battery to the frame, and then we'll hook up all our ground points there, so the battery is able to flow current to all the devices that need ground through a 0 gauge oxygen-free copper cable. So if you're not upgrading the frame ground and then grounding your amplifiers to the frame, that means all the current for everything in your electrical system is passing through the factory 8 gauge ground, which is not good. It creates heat and it can only flow so much current, so your amplifiers are not getting the amount of current that they need to do their job. So not upgrading the ground, we'll call that 5%. Not showing the client proper streaming. So I see clients come in all the time and they'll pay $5, $6, $7, $8, $9, $10,000 for audio, and we'll get the bike tuned up, and then we switch from our phone to their phone and they immediately go to YouTube or FM or some other crushed up, terrible, low bandwidth service. You paid all this money for the best speakers and the best amplifiers, and you're actually playing the worst possible quality music. Then YouTube is the absolute worst, especially the free version. What people don't understand is YouTube uses 90% of their bandwidth for the video portion and only 10% of the bandwidth for audio. And on top of that, the bandwidth that they do use for the audio is compressed, super, super heavily compressed. So the same song played through YouTube, if you play it through any of the $10 a month paid services like Apple Music, Tidal, Spotify, will sound 30 to 40% better through one of the other streaming services just because of the compression that they're using. YouTube uses much higher compression, which makes the file size smaller, which makes the quality less, so they can stream it to you. That's the issue. So I don't expect everybody to run out and get Tidal and get the high quality streaming. Tidal offers the best streaming because it has the largest bandwidth, the file sizes are bigger, but it's $30 a month. You get really decent quality with Apple Music, and don't take my word for it, try it for free. Apple Music, and they have it for Android too, is free for the first 3 months, then $10 a month after that. I know you can all afford $10 a month because you just paid $30,000 for your motorcycle and $5,000 to upgrade the audio on your motorcycle. Now, don't you think your audio is worth at least $10 a month to have better signal going to your amplifiers, to not destroy your speakers? And as business owners, it's your job to show customers this and show them the difference between the same song played on FM and the same song played on YouTube and the same song played on Tidal, Spotify, or Apple Music. And show them the difference between, everybody wants to stream Bluetooth because it's easier not having the phone connected, but show them the quality difference plugging the phone directly into the USB. It's going to sound a lot better. And the better the quality of the signal, the less chance of distorting the signal, the less chance of overheating the amplifier, the less chance of blowing the speaker. This is something you should sit down with your client and explain to them and show them it's simple. Play the song through YouTube, play the same song through Apple Music over Bluetooth, and then play the same song through Apple Music plugged into the USB and show them the difference. The bass sounds better, everything sounds better. It's your job to educate the client. But if you don't, we'll call that another 5%. Phasing. Oh my God, is speaker phasing so important? If you have 2 speakers out of phase on a 6-speaker bike, you have a 4-speaker bike. Because anybody that's ever had 2 subwoofers in their car, in the trunk, and hooked up one of the subs backwards, realize that all your bass goes away and disappears. It's the same thing on the bike. If your mid-bass drivers and the bags are out of phase, you get no output. If your 8s in the lid are out of phase, you get no output. If your 6x9s are out of phase in the lid, you get no output. By no output, I mean you lose a ton of bass and a lot of volume. The speaker will still play. It won't sound right. 90% of the motorcycles there have at least one speaker out of phase. Go on YouTube, do some Google searches, read about phasing. You'll see how important phasing is, and it's very simple to test. There's tracks you can download for free that show you phasing. And without getting super complicated, it'll let you play an in-phase track and then an out-of-phase track. And then if the out-of-phase track sounds better, your speaker's out of phase. With the DSP, this is so much easier because you can test, you could shut off the back speakers, test the front speakers, test the left versus the right, then the upper versus the lower, and then the saddlebags. That's something for a different video, but phasing is super important. If you don't have your speakers in phase, you will lose output, you will lose a ton of bass. But we'll call not checking phasing another 5%. Speaker placement. Speaker placement is crucial as you're designing to plan and build a system. So a set of entry-level lowers costs the same as a set of speaker saddlebag lids. So if I had to personally choose, I would choose lowers over lids because the speakers stay in front of you, so as you're riding down the road, the sound stays in front of you. A lot of the sound from a lid speaker gets carried away. There are certain lids that are better than others because they angle the speaker more towards the rider. But this is something to go over with your builder before you just start ordering parts, because if you can have tweeters placed in a certain spot and speakers in the lower fairings instead of in the lids, or maybe speakers in the tour pack pods, every bike is different, but you might be able to get more from proper speaker placement than going with a larger amplifier. This is some of the stuff to sit down and go over with your builder instead of just randomly buying parts and throwing them on your bike. But if you choose not to do this, we'll call that 5%. And finally, soldering all your connections. Loose connections cause heat. Loose connections cause distortion. Loose connections cause amplifiers and speakers to fail. Loose connections are a stupid reason to have electrical shorts, which could damage audio equipment, blow speakers. If you solder a connection, it's a physical chemical bond that makes sure that connection can never come apart unless the wire physically breaks. It's simple and inexpensive to do, but some people choose not to do it. So we'll call that 5%. We'll call that the final 5%. So if you've been paying attention, there was 10 things on my 5% list. So at the end of giving up 5% here, 5% here, 5% here, if you've done everything on the list or not done anything on the list, you've lost 50% of your sound. That's an F. So that's a 1,000-watt system that plays at 500 watts. That's an amp that should have lasted 5 years, lasting you 2.5 years. It's a huge difference. It's a huge amount. And a lot of stuff on the list won't cost you very much money. It'll just cost you a little bit of time and common sense. So we should all do better. 5% doesn't seem like a lot until you do it 10 times. And that's the problem with these shortcuts that we see on these motorcycles. A lot of stuff that we fix is just little stuff like pulling out the CCA wire and replacing it with oxygen-free copper wire, removing all the butt connectors and all the T-taps and soldering all the connections, checking to make sure all the speakers are in phase, adding a DSP when the bike doesn't have a DSP, upgrading the battery. We just had a bike that came in here that had 6,000 watts RMS on a stock battery that was 3 years old. As soon as we replaced the battery, the customer is like, wow, my bass sounds stronger. Well, of course, because now the amplifier has more power to be able to do its job. It's little stuff. I say it over and over again because I see it every day, day in and day out. A bike comes in that has these problems, and we solve these problems with everything I've mentioned on the list, and the bike is better, and it sounds better, and it's more reliable. So if you care about your clients, or if you care about your motorcycle and you care about your audio build, just pay attention to small things, because 10 small things added together become a big thing. So let's pay a little attention to detail. Let's go over all the small things and build a better bike and provide a better quality product for our client or for ourselves, for you guys that are doing your own builds. You're not at the mercy of having to pay an hourly rate. So instead of doing the bike in one day, take a whole weekend, take 2, take 3 days. Take your time. It's your vehicle. You paid a lot of money for it. Do it right. So it's a long video. I hope this made sense in your head. I hope this motivates shop owners to do better. So I'm constantly hearing on a daily basis where I called this person, they told me I didn't need this and I didn't need that, or that a DSP is overkill, or it's only a 2-speaker bike, so I definitely don't do it. We have 6 bikes here getting an NVS Audio Stage 1 2-speaker setup, and every single bike's getting a DSP. And I feel DSP is more important when you have less, because you demand more from the speakers since there's less of them. So if you have an 8-speaker bike and every speaker's operating at 50%, you get away with it because it's the 8 speakers. When you have a 2-speaker bike, can't operate at 50% because then that's a 1-speaker bike. So with the DSP, we can dial it in and squeeze the most mid-bass possible without destroying the speaker. We can get a little more out of the high end. We can pull back on the frequencies that are overpowering and then boost the frequencies that are lacking a little bit. This is all stuff that we can do with the DSP. If you skip the DSP, then you're at the mercy of whatever signal comes out of the radio will not get corrected. Whatever frequency the speaker likes to naturally play loud at, it's going to be really loud. Whatever frequency the speaker naturally plays low at, it's going to be really low. And it's just not going to be an enjoyable experience for yourself or the client. So I'm going home now. It's late. Thank you.